We're talking about the economics of the dealer function. Let me begin by saying, well, what exactly are we talking about here? What we're talking about today is the provision of so-called market liquidity. We say a market as opposed to funding liquidity. Funding liquidity is the ability to raise money to replace funds, the exact sort of thing that the periphery banks have no ability to do. When they lose deposits, they can't raise funds. Their problem is funding liquidity. Market liquidity is the ability to buy or sell quickly in volume without moving the price. We say that an asset is a liquid asset if you can buy a lot of it and the price doesn't move, or it doesn't move very much, and if you can sell a lot of it and the price doesn't move very much. Okay? Some assets are more liquid than others, and you can tell by seeing how much you move the price if you're leaning on it. This is market liquidity. It has to do with individual markets for individual assets. Okay? What we want to talk about today is, where does market liquidity come from? It comes from dealers, as we'll see. When we think about market liquidity, another way to connect this to what it is that Hicks talks about is to say, well, in a way, a liquid market is a market with a continuous price. The price might be fluctuating, okay, but there's no hops. There's no air pockets. You know, it moves. It might fluctuate around, but it's a continuous price. An illiquid market is one where there might be a few trades, and then a few more trades, and then a few more trades, and there are these like discontinuous prices. So there's this thing about sort of time, continuity in time, that prices move a little bit at a time. They might move a lot in a short period of time, but in any sort of segment of time, they're kind of continuous. And so we're trying to understand today what is the market structure that gives rise to that. Okay? There's nothing in supply and demand, right? You're used to in micro, right? Supply shifts, the price shifts. Okay? So we don't talk in typical microeconomic classes about the market structure underlying these markets. What's going on that we just treat it as if the price moves from one equilibrium to another. Okay? And that's an abstraction from some institutions in the economy. Those institutions are the dealer institutions that we're going to focus on today. Now, we don't have much intuition about security dealers because we aren't security dealers, but we have intuition about a certain kind of dealer, a supermarket. Okay, so let's start our intuition with the West Side supermarket. When I walk into work, I pass by the West Side market, and there's nobody in there because I come in really early. Okay. There's nobody in there. The shelves are full. There's nobody in there. And every evening when I walk home, it seems like all of New York is in there, okay? And it's totally crowded, and the shelves are seriously depleted, okay? Now, if you go in that market, okay, what you notice is the prices are the same in the morning and in the evening. It's very clear that supply and demand are not lined up in time. There's a lot of supply and not much demand in the morning, and yet prices don't fall. There's a lot of demand and not much supply in the evening, and yet prices don't rise. You know, what's going on there? Maybe they're just being lazy. You know, could they make money if they move these prices around? We could ask that. I think it's more important for our purposes is to say, well, how do they achieve that? What are they doing that allows price to be continuous over time, even though demand and supply are fluctuating, or supply is constant, sort of, and demand is fluctuating? How do they do that? They do that. The secret is inventories. right? When I said the shelves, right? They've got a bunch of stuff on the shelves, okay, that absorbs the flow of demand. So in the morning there's no demand and there's a lot of stuff on the shelves, and then as demand comes, the shelves get depleted, and then at night they restock them. Now this is Manhattan, so they don't actually have goods in the basement anywhere, okay? They're bringing them in from Jersey, okay? So there are other inventories in the system. That's the other point. There's inventories in Jersey, okay, that are available, and that's where the main wholesale market for a lot of vegetables and stuff is. And they have restocking from the farms and everything. So there's this whole, dare I say, hierarchy of inventories that is lying behind the ability of West Side Market, okay, to make liquid markets in mangoes. Okay. So the secret is inventories. West Side Market is a liquid market. It's a one-sided market. They're not offering to buy mangoes from me. They're not. If you walk in there with a box of mangoes, they'll ask you if you stole them. Okay, so they want to sell you mangoes, but they're definitely buying mangoes. They're just buying them from Jersey or from somewhere else. So they're what we call a one-sided dealer. The wholesale, they're buying wholesale and they're selling retail. Okay, there's a kind of security dealer that does this too. When you do an initial public offering or something like that of a security, an investment bank acts as a one-sided dealer, meaning they buy the whole thing, or they promise to buy the whole thing, and then they distribute it. And so they're buying it wholesale and they're distributing it retail. And so they might have a lot of it on their balance sheet at any moment because they haven't distributed it yet. You know, that's a one-sided dealer. So we can start to build inventories, start to build intuition with this intuition we have about supermarkets.